I think after Hav died, that was harder for a lot of people. At least I felt that way. That there was a moment or a period where people moved on more, and I think expected us to move on, to snap back to normal, to be resilient, which is a term I sort of hate, because we're forever changed, and life is not going to be the same. It's never going to go back that way. And I think after Hav died, after some period of time, colleagues and bosses were struggling with that, didn't know how to come to that at all. I think people are afraid of feeling bad. They're afraid of things that, quote, bring them down. I had a conversation with my boss before I left my job after Hav died. It was maybe 6 months after she had died. And my boss told me that when I was in the office sometimes that my energy was low and that I was bringing people down and they didn't know how to be around me, and that was really hard for them. And I was like incredulous, hard for them? Like, are you kidding me? I never get to hold my daughter ever again. And she died 6 months ago. This is raw. This is raw. And you're telling me that my behavior is making people feel badly in the office or feel down or they don't know how to behave? That's like such a joke. It's so cruel. And I think that the better response, or maybe the ideal response, is to lean into that, to recognize that grief and anguish and agony and the longing that we have for the people that we've lost is not something that goes away ever. It changes, and the color of it changes, and the shape of it changes, and how it shows up in our lives change, but it never goes away. We don't move past it. And having compassion or recognition or leaning into that in an empathetic way, that's how it should be. And it makes us better when we do that. It makes life fuller and richer, and you see both sides. We're not just focused on, one wavelength of existing in a happy state.
The approach could look much more community oriented. I think an approach could be one in where people feel like they have an ecosystem of different resources, and that would require each pocket to really understand loss and grief and get educated. And I also think that there's also educating grieving people. I remember a conversation we had with Dr. Joe where we were talking about this feeling that the world was moving on and we weren't, and she described like the curve of traumatic loss, where when you experience a traumatic loss, the pain actually gets a lot more intense before you get strong enough to hold it. So our curve is like this, and the rest of the world hasn't experienced our traumatic loss. So of course their curve is like this. And when I can come to other people and other situations and environments and see in an interaction those curves, then all of a sudden their behaviors are less hurtful. Like, because I understand the foundation of them. And that's just really helpful.